she's really inspirational. She kind of made me feel like, yeah, why aren't I out there hiking the California Coastal Trail? If I'm building it, I should hike it. So I want you guys to give Marlene Padilla, local resident and trail builder and hiker extraordinaire, a big round of applause.
Thank you. How's that? Thank you. I'm a little bit nervous, so bear with me. So what I've got here is a slideshow of my adventures of the California Coast Trail, and I'm going to tattoo that on me someday. If you get used to the cold weather. It actually you get warm when you're cold. I don't know how that works, but it did. And these are the signs, so you can see where people put objects on them, so you know you're going in the right direction. Because a lot of the time it veers off the beach because of a rock crops or whatever, and then you start having to look down because the signs are actually in the grass. So you have to know that there's actually a trail. So you have to be able to read a trail. And I thought, I'm going to take a little picture and remind myself I am on the Lost Coast. And that's some kind of really fuzzy seal. I don't know what type it was, but it was really cool to see just the life along. I saw an otter that I thought was a fox. It was that big, and I chased it, and it ran a lot faster than me. That's a beached whale. I could smell that about 2 miles before I came across it.
There's dinner.
Oh, there you go. That was dinner. I could have had some blubber. And this is some of the hikers. This guy hiked with that helmet on, his World War II helmet, the entire coast. So I thought, okay, I'm not as crazy as I think I am. This is Spanish Flat. It's really nice. A lot of sea lions and seals along the way, and keep taking pictures of myself to remind myself that I actually did this. I still can't believe that I did it. That's an octopus. I could have had some more dinner, some sushi or something. And that's just that's where I was heading towards. That's Shelter Cove, and that was only $35 a night to camp there, which wasn't too bad. And these guys kind of just showed up in my campsite and started playing music for me, so I said, go ahead. And, that was pretty entertaining. And as I was heading up over the Shamish Mountain, I got to the very top, and I heard this large clap, and I turned around and looked towards the Yola and all I could see was black. And I ran down as fast as I could. I set this camp up for 3 days, and I was going crazy. So I had to pull out my little beaver and play with it. And this is actually heading towards going through the last end of the Lost Coast through the Shamish mountain range. It's so steep. They kind of compare it to the Grand Canyon. I literally walked my baby toenails off. They just came off. One day I put my socks on and they weren't there. And then a couple of days later, I lost a couple of more. So I think in total, I lost 5 toenails. But it didn't hurt, really. Everything else hurt, but not my toes. And then we started running into these Roosevelt elk, and I ran into 14 female cows that wouldn't let me pass. And so I ran into an outhouse, and I started laughing. I was like, I am not staying here overnight. What am I going to do? So I saw these campers about, a quarter mile away, so I started whistling. They walked over, and they walked me through the herd of cows, which was only my first obstacle of Roosevelt elk, is they are all over the place. And I thank God that they were in velvet, because if they weren't, they would have charged, because I hear it's pretty dangerous in September through there. And I actually started my hike May 10th and finished September 10th. It took me 5 months to do it. And the guy who took that picture is the one who rescued me from the elk. This is the cove that I came from. I was doing an average of 12 to 16 miles a day. On a good day, I was doing 20. And the Mattole Road was, like I said, So this elk here, this was the very last elk, and he trapped me behind a little fir tree. So I thought, wow, I have a pack of firecrackers. I'm going to chuck one at him. So I did. I lit a firecracker, and it pissed him off. And he literally took a couple of steps towards me. So I thought that wasn't going to work. So I apologized. And I asked him to please let me pass. 20 minutes later, which felt like 2 hours later, he finally let me pass. And as I passed him, another large elk just popped up out of the bush, and I got up to his butt, and he was probably that big. They're humongous. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but if you haven't, you should go ahead and do that one stretch of the Lost Coast through Usal. Beautiful. One of the most, I have to say that was one of my favorite stretches. And this is looking towards Mendocino, and I was so happy. I was like, yay, I get to see my family. I get to see my friends. I don't have to cook. I'm going to eat top ramen. And so I headed out, and I got hosted, and a lot of people who hosted me are here, and I'd like to thank them for being here, because they were my angels right there. Kathy and Willits for a couple of days. She let me clean my stinky clothes. And then she took me back to my starting point. So I didn't lose any trail. What I did do is I walked from Oregon to Monterey. This is my family here in Fort Bragg who hosted me for a week, which was really nice because I didn't have to carry my backpack with me. And I was able to walk 10, 15 miles, and they pick me up, take me back to their house, feed me, take me to the starting point again, and head on. And it got easier as I got closer to home, which is in Point Arena, because I had friends that were able to pick me up. And people were driving by who knew me would stop and ask me if I needed a ride. No, I didn't, but you can pick me up about 5 miles down the road, I'd say. So this is coming through Fort Bragg, and I was so happy. I was just so happy to be in Mendocino. But the big thing that changed is there's a lot of people. And I was just so excited to see people. I wanted to touch them and talk to them and say hey. But everybody was on their own little journey. So I was still in my own journey. So I just kept going. And it was okay. I don't know, you can't really see it, but there's a little squirrel there. And he said, hold on, hold it up. There it is. And of course everybody knows where that is. That's one of your landmarks. I think that tree was about as big as the one that I had my backpack on in the beginning of my slide. All the lighthouses I hit along the way because they're there and they were in my path. And this is a reminder. Danger. That could be me. And this is the entertainment I had in Fort Bragg. My niece did a little soft shoe for me. That's Anea, by the way. And then, here are the signs, and I really appreciate seeing the signs everywhere in our lovely town of Mendocino. That's in the Pygmy Forest. I found an environmental camp after I had paid at the Russian Gulch of Van Dam. And this is about 2 miles in from Van Dam, and I didn't have to pay if I would have walked 2 more miles. And I would have if I would have known it was there. And I had decided at that time to do an alternate route and not stay on the highway because I didn't want to be on the highway. This is going throughout the Seven Sisters. Really beautiful spot. I met this really cool guy there, Merlin from Louisville, Kentucky. And all he could tell me was everything was cool beans. Cool beans, man. Cool beans. So I asked him if he had a can of beans. I mean, I was hungry. I was anything but top ramen. But I did eat at Queenie's, and I tore up the biggest burger they had. Orale, who's that? By the way, I'm from East LA, if you don't know, born and raised. I moved to Bishopsville. I moved to Point Arena in '94, and it was an easy adjustment for me because I always knew I didn't belong in East LA. I was just born there. And this is a lot of what became in Mendocino was just a lot of highway. And then I was happy. This is Point Arena. This is the cove. This is where I live. I remember watching the Coast Group walk through 10 years ago, and I said, I can do this. I can do this. And I signed up for it, but I was a couple of weeks late, and I was on the alternate list, but there were people and they were taken off. So it took me 10 years to finally decide that I can do this, and I did. So I finally did it after 10 years. And this is actually, Moat Creek Trail is one of the trails that I helped design and build. So this is on the California Coast Trail. And when I was in Big Sur, I was actually on some trail that I did there. And when I went through GGNRA, Golden Gate National Recreation Center, I went through a trail that I had built there with SEA. I came across a lot of trail closures. You know, this is the time of the year that I'm walking through. And I had met 3 guys that were coming from south to north, and they went through a section of the trail that was closed. And at the end of the trail, they were each issued a ticket for going through. So I, you know, turned around, backtracked, and these are the signs. I actually put the signs up that Roxanne was showing earlier. Hey. This is looking towards Gualala. And there I am, look at that, check that out, I'm very agile. Don't do this at home. It's Point Arena. And leaving Point Arena, you know, I really, you know, and when I was following the books, you know, it tells you where you can get food and resupply. A lot of the stores, a lot of the towns, some of them are just ghost towns now. This store wasn't open. And I knew that only because I live in that area, I knew that the store I wasn't gonna be able to resupply. So I had to supply from Gualala to Jenner at the C-store. I got more top ramen. They got top ramen everywhere. Salt Point, I worked on Salt Point State Park trail crew for 2 years, and this is another section of trail that I worked on, which is the new section of Stump Beach. I don't know if you guys have ever done that section. Really beautiful, a lot of mushrooms, if you're a mushroom hunter. And this is through July. I am a 4th of July baby, so I took some pictures in Fort Ross, which was really nice because I walked through the back end, and I got into the visitor center, and Rob was working, and I had worked for Salt Point, so he gave me a guide through there, which was really nice. And the campsites were full. The hike and bike sites started to become far and in between. So he actually shuttled me back to Sonoma Regional Park for their hike and bike site. And then it started getting really, really hard to find any camping. And more residents, you know, more pavement, and a lot less camping. A lot of the hike and bike sites are closed further south. So, I mean, those are my very best friends. They took me off the trail and we went into the Sierras for 3 days and took me back, so it was just trees, and it all starts to look the same, just really beautiful, magical, really glad. I still, like I said, I can't believe that I did this. And this is going into San Francisco area where there is no camping at all. And I was really fortunate to have a host who hosted me there for 3 days, where I was able to take my pack off again, walk. She would pick me up, or public transportation back. And this is the section of Bodega where a lot of the houses were just blown out, and coming into Sonoma County, which was really nice because I actually worked at the Sea Ranch for 3 years. And unfortunately, they have 10 miles of bluff trail that you don't have access to. So I was on the highway again. And let's see, I'm not sure where I'm at, like I said. I'm right here, actually, right here. No camping, a lot of no camping. Unfortunately, I didn't have photos through GGNRA. My battery died in my camera, so I bought a disposable camera, and I was only able to take selective shots. And I have the biggest phobia of bridges, and it took what should have taken me 20 minutes to get across this 1 mile, if even that, 15 minutes, took me 45. And at the end of it, I was drenched in sweat, and it was one of the coldest days. But it was really hard. And then it was down in Southern California. This is near, just out of Pebble Beach. Santa Cruz, Elkhorn Slough, actually, that's where this is. When I was in the CCC, we did a lot of work out in the Elkhorn Slough, and I remember partying on this ship many, many nights. And then just, this is when I was actually able to start jumping into the ocean and not freezing. A lot of soft sand, hard sand, Monterey Bay Aquarium. Don't you dig those glasses? Don't you want some? This is actually, I skipped a large section there because of my camera. This is in Carlsbad, the very southern end of the coast. And there is a lot of development going on down there. There is a lot of erosion, and I did quite a bit of backtracking. But what I did is I tried to stay true to the trail. What ended up happening is, of the 1,200 miles, I think I walked about 800 of it, and about 400 I took rides with public transportation, and I had a little sign that said 20 miles, please. And I got a couple of rides. It just got harder to find camping. It wasn't in my budget. And this is what you do when you're bored. Somebody left their boots. So I had no G.I. Joe. This guy, Chris, he actually was a biker, and I have this newfound respect for bikers. I love them. They really took me in, and for 2 weeks, he had been pedaling his dog for 1,800 miles, and he lived in Santa Barbara. We met up in Big Sur, so when we hit to Santa Barbara, we went our separate ways, but he became like my big little brother. It was really nice, because he'd ride ahead and make sure there was camping, and if there wasn't camping, he'd go to the next campsite, and to the next one until he found camping, set camp, and rode back to tell me where to go. So, this guy was a rock. And then he was toting his dog, all the way. That's him in Corona. I couldn't believe that guy smoked cigarettes like you would not believe. And then I remember seeing these when I was a kid, and I was like, ooh, 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 I think I'm getting close to home. Because I, was raised in Southern California. And I remember I put my backpack down here, and this little kid was thrashing the stick around. And I thought, I'm going to hold on to my hiking stick, because I had this hiking stick from the beginning. And I went into this little store to, grab something to drink. And I came out, and it was gone. And I was like, oh, bummer. But it was cool. So I replaced it with another stick, because there's lots of sticks. There's my 20-mile sign. And this is a hostel, actually, in Santa Monica. And I found out the hard way that you have to book a room almost 2 weeks in advance. So you have to stay on track. And if you're going to be late, you have to give them a 3-day notice, or they'll charge you for they'll just charge you the room rate. And of course, Venice Beach. I had this one guy run up to me and insist I eat some noodles and cheese because he thought I was homeless. I said, no, thank you, I have top ramen. And then Jan, who I met at the Pigeon Point Lighthouse, was so inspired by me. She hosted me in Redondo Beach. I was there for a week, and she decided to do the last 10 days with me. So I had a bike person following me, and I had a backpacking partner, which was really nice towards the end. And this is getting near the Mexican border, reminding, I just thought that was really cool. The tide was coming in. And this is Mexico. And I really wanted to cross the border for a taco and a beer. And my friend said, no, you need to have a margarita too. And I said, okay, but I don't have a passport. And the guy said, well, you know what, we'll let you in, but we won't let you out. I said, okay. I'm not doing it. So that's Jan and me at the very end of the border. This is the ending of my hike. And I was relieved. And this is what happens to you when you're walking the California Coast Trail. You got to love the skin you're in. I love it. Look at it. And that's it. That's the end of my slide. That's it. Anybody wants some top ramen recipes? Ask me.
I can't believe that aren't there some public trails along Sea Ranch? Because
No. No.
To get that property, I thought they had to dedicate some trails.
I think
Are they
for
always-
the first half mile from the Sonoma Regional Park there allows access to
Oh, to
the
certain
beach,
points.
but it's only east and west. You can't go north on it.
Thank you.
And even though I had worked at the Sea Ranch, and I know they have 10 miles of beautiful bluff trail, it's not open to the public. But it's open in Carmel, where the houses are bigger and you know, and they let you through. So that's something that the Sea Ranch should consider. And
When you hit Southern California, say south of Santa Barbara, at least Malibu, can't you pretty much walk the beach except for the, what's the Naval Marine at Pendleton?
yeah.
Can't you just walk the beach almost all the way?
Yes, but because of Homeland Security, through Camp Pendleton, I had decided to just take public transportation around it. And then when I got more towards Santa Barbara, the hike and bike sites were starting to disappear. They just closed them. You know, I got to Carlsbad, and I had called 2 or 3 days ahead of time to let them know that I was coming through. When I got there, they had closed the campsite, and I said, well, you know, I was with Jan, and they said, well, you look like a real backpacker. And I said, hey, I just came from Oregon, California border, and they still didn't open it up for me. But they did give me a slab of cement for $55. And they told me that I could walk to the Marriott, and I said, yeah, thank you. I will. Not.
Any other questions?
I want to ask you about your 20. Was the 20 a sign that you held out on the highway?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
When I got to sections of the highway that were too dangerous with no shoulder, like when I got out of Usal, that was really sketchy. That's really, and after that is when I actually got into Monterey. I called about 5 friends to try to talk them to get me to stop the hike. I was like, I don't want to do it. Tell me I don't have to do it. And they're like, no, you got to do it. So I did it. And I just kept going.
Marvelous.
Thank you.
So I want to ask Marlene, what would you advise somebody to hike the California Coastal Trail?
Well, you know what? If you don't hike the trail, it's not a trail. So you've got to get out there and hike.
Thanks, Marlene.